Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Community America Credit Union. My guest today has an incredible book, but a lot of times I'll have a guest on and they've got a new book and it's a really interesting topic. And of course, this is an interesting topic, but I think what makes this book so unique, along with just the personal aspect of it, and if you're watching us on YouTube, you can kind of see me thumbing through it right now, or maybe you can hear me going through the pages, is that this one's been out for a number of years. And I think it's one of those timeless books, no matter where we are in life or generation, that'll live on forever, because there's so much advice that has been passed down from a father to a daughter, and then to so many that have read this book, that have heard my guests speak, and on and on and on. It's just chock full of life lessons, personal, professional. And so Mary B. Lucas is an author, speaker, and I think most importantly, and I believe it's why she and I really hit it off, she's a people connector. Mary's highly successful book, and the title is so great and very meaningful, Lunchmeat Life Lessons, is a motivational memoir and tribute to her father on how to bring out the best in yourself and others. The book's momentum took off immediately after it was published in 2006, and its impact is felt around the world. Companies, professional organizations, and universities invite Mary to speak to audiences to share her wit and wisdom. She has spoken to thousands of people at hundreds of corporate audiences, commencement addresses, professional meetings, with one mission: to share life lessons that help people create meaningful connections and inspire themselves. Who does not need that in life, no matter what your profession, or even if you don't have a profession? We're all looking for that. So it's so good to have in the podcast right now Mary Lucas, who joins me from, I believe, her home in the Kansas City area. And Mary, welcome to the podcast. I have to tell you that, and I told you this when you and I finally met virtually somewhat recently, when I started in this business, someone, and I think it was our good friend Alana Mueller, gave me a copy of your book and said, you have to check this out. And then we were out for coffee a few months ago, and your name came up, and I said, I've still never met her. And so she connected us, and then you send me the hard copy of Lunchmeat Life Lessons, Sharing a Butcher's Wisdom. This is a must-have book. First off, welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Well, thank you for having me. And I thank Alana so much, because she's such a great people connector as well. So I think she's connected me with so many, and I'm so grateful we finally have met.
Yeah, well, and you know this too. We'll get into the book, of course, but life is about connections.
Yeah,
and that's universal, and that doesn't matter whether you have a high-profile job, a low-profile job, whether you're an extrovert, whether you're an introvert, whether you're in sales, whether you're working in a cubicle by yourself. You can't do anything in life completely alone. I mean, to me, you tell me what you think. Connections and relationships make the world go round.
Exactly. And I think that's what people laugh at the name Lunchmeat Life Lessons, just like you did. The reason why it's called that is, again, my name's Mary B. Lucas. When you see the name, I always put B in the middle, because that stands for Bickelmeyer. My maiden name's Bickelmeyer. My father was a butcher by trade with an 8th grade education, yet he was the smartest man I ever knew, and one of the most successful individuals I've ever met in my entire career. And I've had a fantastic career. And yet the book is called Lunchmeat Life Lessons because he knew that. I think he innately knew that the most important thing you can do is make meaningful connections with people around you, one person at a time, and you'll be successful. And I think to me, that's the real key, and the essence behind it is he taught me, and then I share in the book stories and wisdom that helped me create meaningful connections throughout my career, but I think have now live on way past my father. The epitaph on his tombstone is, "To live in hearts we leave behind is not to die. To live in hearts we leave behind is not to die." And his legacy of inspiring others lives on because of the sweet little book I wrote about him.
Which I know you never intended it to turn into this. I think that, and I don't know, if you had the ability to sort of take a step back and look at it from 30,000 feet and say, wait a minute, he has all of this wisdom, and I'm able to capture all of this wisdom. This really could resonate with people. maybe you would have seen it. I think you were probably too close to it. It was too
Yeah.
personal to do that. It makes sense now after the fact. It
Yeah.
totally makes sense to me. But at the time, I don't I don't think this is what you were looking to do. What were you looking to do?
No, what's interesting is you're right. I'm an accidental author, but I'm an intentional communicator. And the intention behind it was at my my father passed away. It was Christmas week. There was a lot more going on in my family. We also lost my sister right after my father. We had a double funeral. My dad was always a bargain hunter. He found a way to do a 2-for-1. And he just kind of willed himself. My sister was ill at the time with cancer, and my father just didn't want to bury another child. My mom was gone before we had lost a brother, and so here we were at this cemetery, grief-stricken family. And I'm from this huge family, and one of my nieces comments, "Now that Grandpa's gone, who's going to give me Lunchmeat and Life Lessons now?" She called it Lunchmeat Life Lessons, and I said, "What do you mean Lunchmeat and Life Lessons?" And she said, "When Grandpa's gone now, Grandma's gone. He's the person I go to. I sit across from him. He's the one who holds the family together. And whenever I'm down in the dumps, I go see Grandpa. And he always has a long stick of salami, slices it real thin, gets, Wonder Bread. You have a salami sandwich, and he'll dish out food for thought and inspiration. And every time I leave him, if I'm down in the dumps, I say, Grandpa, I need to come out and get some Lunchmeat and Life Lessons. And I go out there and I see him. I have my salami sandwich. Grandpa gets me back on track, and I walk away inspired. And it was that moment that I think my heart was broken anyway, but I thought, oh my gosh, Chase and Nick, my 2 sons. The good news about being number 9 of 10 children is your parents are super tired when you're growing up, and I got away with everything. The bad news is that your children will never know their grandparents the way these older grandchildren would. And so all I could think about were Chase and Nick, my 2 sons. They will never know their grandpa, and they'll never have Lunchmeat and Life Lessons. Or could they? Now remember, the epitaph, "To live in hearts we leave behind is not to die." I was looking at that. It was already there. My mother had passed away before. The tombstone's there already. And I just thought, I want him to live on. I want my boys to know him. So I wrote this sweet little book, and I started writing that day. I wrote chapter 1, which is a story. I graduated from college and got my first dose of Lunchmeat and Life Lessons when he told me, "You're going into the people business. I can help you succeed in the people business if you listen to me." And then I wrote the last chapter, which is unusual, as you know, as an author. I wrote the first chapter, then I wrote the last chapter, the story of his last day. And then over the course of 2 years, I wrote all the other chapters, because I would think, oh yeah, this is what Dad would tell me if I had a customer I didn't like. This is what Dad would tell me if there was a lot of chaos and drama going on at the office, or this is what, and I had notes from lunches with him, and I actually referred to these notes. In the first version of the book, I even have a copy of some of the notes when he told me the Over the L story. And again, during our short time together, there's not enough time to tell the stories, but it was like, I just wrote these stories, and a couple of years later, I had a whole book, and it was a Kinko's spiral bound version. It was before Kinko's was FedEx Office now. And I had my niece who's we have people in our family that are so talented, they can do everything. So a graphic designer in our family, she laid out the first version, and $57 a color copy at Kinko's. And I thought, okay, Dad died at 88. On his, what would have been his 90th birthday, I thought I'll have a birthday party for him. And I got 10 copies made, 8 for my surviving brothers and sisters, and 1 for Chase and 1 for Nick. And I had a birthday. Dad would say, if you don't have a happy birthday, it's your own damn fault. So I thought I'll have a birthday party for him. And I gave everybody a copy of the book, Lunchmeat and Life Lessons, Sharing a Butcher's Wisdom by Mary B. Lucas, BD. BD stands for Butcher's Daughter, best education I ever got. And I gave them all a copy, and I thought that would be the end of it. And I told them, it's over on file at Kinko's if you want it, get it for your kids. I'm not paying $57 a color copy for all your kids. And the next thing you know, it's being spread around all over Kansas City. And this is way back, seems like so long ago, in 2006. And my husband was sharing it all over Kansas City. He ends up at Indian Hills Golf Course. And I think he gives a copy to Dave Lockton, the CEO of the Lockton Companies. Dave calls me a couple of days later and said, I want to share this with all my producers. Producers at Lockton is the code for salespeople. I want to share this wisdom. It's one of the best books I've ever read on how to connect with people. And we didn't get as big as we are because we ended up, acting like a big company. We got as big as we are because we treated our customers, our clients with, you know, exactly what your dad detailed for you. So I said, well, it's $57 a color copy at Kinko's, go for it. And the next thing you know, it was like, okay, I need to get in a real live book version. So I did. And now over 70,000 copies later, we're, like you said, I'm asked to speak and share his wisdom. I was at Dana Point a couple of weekends ago at a PERC ophthalmologist convention. I'm going to Salvation Army next month in Santa Fe, New Mexico. You know, COVID travel has been limited, so I'm doing a lot of Zoom presentations, but it's usually, is it a place I want to go? It's not what I do for a living. I'm very involved in the senior living communities right now, working in the people business there. But I do it because I love keeping my father's legacy alive, and his wisdom seems to inspire so many people all these years later. And he's going places across the world. I mean, I'll get a phone call from someone in Croatia, or, you know, I've been to Helsinki, Finland, sharing his wisdom, to Scotland twice, to Ireland twice. You know, England, it's beyond me what's happened. And I'm just so grateful.
It's remarkable. And, you know, I think that there are a lot of elements that had to line up right for this to happen. You have to be able to be a good writer. You have to be a good storyteller. You obviously have all of that. I think there's a little bit in the secret sauce too, to saying that, you know, you didn't put the cart before the horse. This was so organic, and not that it always has to be, but I think when it's organic and it's right, it can do some things that you never expected before. Yeah. So that clearly has happened. But I do believe, and I'm sure you do too, that it all starts with your father. I mean, if those messages, look, those messages don't live on, the legacy doesn't live on in the way that it has without your ability to tell a story, without your ability to write. But it all began with his life lessons. And I don't know, did you, being in a big family, being one of the youngest and all those siblings, did you know as a kid, we know so little as kids. Yeah. Did you know you were getting this top of the line education from your dad, who was a butcher, or no, absolutely not. I thought he was cheesy. I mean, I just thought he was like, okay, everybody loved Dad, John Bickelmeyer. Everybody, he had all this. I mean, he wouldn't just hold court behind the cash register at Bickelmeyer Meats. He was like, anywhere we went, I would be like, okay, tell me your story. He was so interested in people. And again, I'm number 9 of 10. When we said our prayers at night, we'd say, God bless Joan, Judy, Johnny, Jimmy, Joey, Jerry, Jeannie, Jane, Mary, and Barbara. And, my sister Joan had kids my age about, and, our family was huge. And so it was busy and a lot going on, and, always being, going here for brothers' sports and activities and doing this. And I grew up just kind of like, okay, well, they just loved me. That was all there. There was no pressure on me. They just loved me. And I was one in the mix. And I just remember thinking, especially when I got in my teenage years, Dad was a fun dad. He'd always make rhymes with my friends' names, or he would be, but I was closer to Mom. She had my name and I had her heart. I had her name and she had my heart. Her name was Mary. My name was Mary. She was older when I was born. They said, it was so funny because I would have been Jeff. I would have been Jeff if I was a boy, but they didn't get a boy. So they named me Mary after my mom. And then Barbie, my sister who I told you, who's the vice chancellor at KU, where your son just went, provost there. And we were the only non-Jays. So here we were in this big family. And I just remember, almost in some ways avoiding Dad because I was a girly girl. I didn't want to work in the meat market. I was like, I just remember thinking he was fun and we loved him, but when you're around him, you worked, and he was always just connecting with people and all. And then it was when I was the first chapter of the book. It was when I was 22 years old. I was completely full of myself, first generation college graduate, and I get a job in corporate America. I'm going to be a recruiter for this staffing company. And I remember the day like it was yesterday. I got the job. I get the phone call. I got the job. And Dad calls me over to the butcher block table. And he goes, you got that job you wanted? You're going into the people business? And I looked at him and I said, no, Dad, I'm going into the staffing industry, whatever. I remember just rolling my eyes at him. I was so disrespectful. And I don't know, maybe it was because I was number 9 of 10. He just didn't get mad at me. He didn't get angry at my disrespect. He just looked at me and looked deep in my eyes, which is what he did.
And he said, girl, get out of your own way. You're going into the people business. You're going to find people, work, and companies, people. That's what you're going to do for a living. Don't overcomplicate it. I'm in the people business. I help people put food on their table. Your mom is in the people business. She helps raise up good, upstanding young people. No matter what you do for a living, if you don't find ways to make meaningful connections with the people around you, one person at a time, you will not be successful. So yeah, girl, you're going into the people business. And if you listen to me, I might be able to share a thing or two with you that will help you be successful, because I've done pretty well for myself in the people business. I would, you look around you, and I thought, that was the moment. I was like, oh my gosh, look around me. Guy with an 8th grade education had to, quit school during the Depression, go in and help raise money for his brothers and sisters to survive. His mother died at the age of 42, and he was unbelievably successful. Bicklemeyer Meats, if you haven't been down there lately, you should go down there. It's kind of back to business as usual post-COVID. They were the busiest they've ever been during COVID because everybody wanted to know where the quality of the meat was coming from. And they're back to serving tacos on Saturday. Voters Magazine voted the #1 taco in the state of Kansas, the whole state of Kansas. They are, they are pouring the comeback sauce on, one of Dad's favorite phrases, still all these years later, and the business has had the best year it ever had last year. And he did very well financially, but I think more importantly, personally, he was the guy that was the Grand Marshal of the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Shawnee, Kansas, and our last name was Bicklemeyer. It doesn't get more German than that. Or people would seek him out. They'd always want him to run for office, and he would never do it. He said, I want my time with my family. I want my time. I've got, just his legacy was about creating these stories and connections and examples about how to coach and how to help others be the best they can be. And I felt very much, like I said, it was an honor for me to share his wisdom so that my boys could have and reference how, what he shared with me. And like I said, it's such a gift that others find inspiration and motivation and from his wisdom as well, all these years later.
This truly, truly applies to everyone, and it takes all of us longer in life to figure that out. I say this regularly on this podcast. I love what I do, all of what I do now. All I ever dreamed of doing was being a broadcaster, and I realized that dream. I never thought that it would turn into a speaking career, which I'm equally passionate about. But the common thread when people say, wait, you cover baseball, you're on TV, you meet so-and-so, what's that like? And I say, I'm in the people business. Yes, and we all are. And when you understand that, everything else in life becomes easier, in my opinion. You referenced the comeback sauce, and you've got such good marketing material too. It's also creative, which matches up with your writing abilities. But on the comeback sauce recipe, it says 1 part recognition, 1 part. This is the shorter version. 1 part recognition, 1 part connection. Add a dose of the unexpected. Shake well and pour liberally. I was just thinking about that as you were talking about Bicklemeyer Meats and the pandemic, because I think that right there, add a dose of the unexpected, shake well and pour liberally. We got to keep moving on no matter what comes our way, and it's never what's expected.
Well, and I remember when I first met you, our first conversation, I don't know if you even remember this, but I was thinking, he gets it. When you talked, I was thinking about, he gets it. He knows what the comeback sauce is, because what you were talking about when we talked about, we're both in the people business. We're all in the people business. And you said, it's those conversations in the locker room. It's those conversations in the dugout. It's conversations, and you're no different with the person behind the camera, the cameraman, or the person that you're interviewing. You treat everybody with integrity and respect, and you figure out the ways to make sure you make meaningful connections with everyone around you. And it'll serve you well. And I remember it was the day I heard the comeback sauce story, and I'd heard it my whole life. Dad would always say, pour the comeback sauce on. But it was that same day. Picture me, 22 years old, first generation college graduate. I figure, I've always said this, if they ever make, most of your listeners are not seeing me right now, they're listening on the podcast. And so I always like to people, like close your eyes and think about, visualize this this interaction. So if they ever make a movie of Lunchmeat Life Lessons, I want Ed Asner to play my dad. If Ed Asner, the guy who from Mary Tyler Moore, or, in the movie Up, he's the voice of that little man in the movie Up, that Pixar movie. That would be, there was a caricature of my dad. It would be that guy in the movie Up, the hat, the suspenders, just that kind of gruff outlook and voice. And so here I am, he's sitting over the butcher block table with that, and Ed Asner is from Kansas City, Kansas. I don't know if you know that, but he looks like my dad, sounds like my dad. And so he calls me over and I say, if they make a movie, Cameron Diaz needs to play me. That would be my dream, right? So here I am, he calls me over to the butcher block table and he goes, you're going into the people business, get out of your own way. And I'm rolling my eyes. And then he says, Mary, if you listen to me, I might be able to share a thing or two with you about how to be successful in the people business. And I listened. I said, Dad, what do you want to tell me? What's the one thing you want to tell me before I start my first day on my new job in the people business? I'm listening to you now, Dad. And he goes, that's easy. Don't forget the comeback sauce. And I said, comeback sauce? I've heard you say this a million times. What do you mean by that? He said, you pour the comeback sauce on everybody you come in contact with and you'll be just fine. And I said, that is so cheesy. Again, I'm saying that is so cheesy, Dad. Comeback sauce. Where did you come up with that? I've heard you say that all these years. What does it mean exactly? He said, it's easy. He said, he goes, I'll tell you when I came up with it. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And, he said, I had 7 mouths to feed, 5 kids and your mom and me. And I open up finally, after so many years of working with Mr. Snow, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to open up my own business. I want to be my own boss. I open up Bicklemeyer Meats right down by the river, 704 Cheyenne. He goes, I open up and I'm so proud. Johnny's Market, Bicklemeyer Meats. Johnny's Market, it says in the window, my name. And he said, and I remember open up and I wasn't in business. I took 2 guys with me. I wasn't in business more than a couple of weeks. And these 2 guys come in one morning and they go, Johnny, we're in trouble. And I'm standing at the cash register and they're like yakking at me, Johnny, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. And Dad said, what do you mean we're in trouble? And they said, we were at Sammy's bar last night and our competitor, Mr. Snow was there and some of our competitors, and we got a problem, Johnny, we got a problem. And Dad said, what's our problem? And he said, they said, Johnny, that every time you advertise a price per pound, they're going to advertise 10 cents per pound cheaper until you can't afford to be in business any longer. Johnny, this is bad. They're yakking. Johnny, this is bad. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Do you think Mr. Snow will take us back at the same pay wage? What are we going to do? And Dad said, they're so upset. And he goes, and I just started laughing. I'm belly laughing. I'm laughing at him. And they go, what are you laughing at, Johnny? This isn't funny. This is bad. Dad said, yeah, it is funny. Their plan won't work, guys. We don't have any money to advertise. None. All we got is the quality of the product we sell, the roof over our heads, and what little we pay ourselves. He goes, wait a minute. We got comeback sauce, boys. You pour the comeback sauce on every customer who comes in here and we'll do just fine. I'm not worried about it. We don't need to advertise. Just make sure every person who comes in here feels like you treated them extra special. Just make that connection with them. And they were like looking at him like, well, what are you talking about? And this is long before these leadership books where they say, empower your people. Like, what are you talking about, Johnny? And he goes, I don't know. You figure it out. The recipe's the same. You just want to make a connection. The ingredients are different. What's important to him is not important to her. And he said, they wanted an example. So he said, so I gave him an example. And he said, all right, look, let's replay the first customer of the day. You guys come in, you're yakking at me by the cash register. A customer comes in right in the middle of our conversation. And let me replay. I'm going to replay the conversation, the interaction exactly the way I saw it. And then I'm going to replay it with a little comeback sauce. So let's see. You're yakking at me. The door opens up. The bell rings over the door. First customer of the day comes in. You look up because you know you're up. You go over and you say, good morning. How can I help you? Come on over here. Come on down here. You walk down behind the meat counter and you look over and you say, how can I help you today? Customer says, I'd like a pound of ground beef, please. And you said, coming right up. And you said, how you doing today? Oh, not so great. My wife and baby are sick. They've been sick all weekend. My wife finally has her appetite back. She wants spaghetti ready for dinner tonight. So I came in to get a pound of ground beef to make that up for her. Well, there you go. There's your pound of ground beef. Thank you so much for coming in. Going around the corner, Johnny will cash you out. And that was fine interaction. Just fine. Wasn't any comeback sauce on it. What would you have done differently, Johnny? You said. All right, let's replay the interaction and put a little comeback sauce on it. The door opens up. The bell rings over the door. You're yakking at me. You're all worked up because of what you heard down at the bar last night. You stop. The moment you see that customer come in, you walk back, take 2 steps back, take a deep breath, clear your head, and open your heart and get ready to make a connection. Walk down behind that meat counter, look up over, make eye contact and say, "Good morning. How can I help you? First customer of the day. You win the award. Come on down here. What can I do for you? I'd like a pound of ground beef, please." Coming right up. "How you doing today?" "Oh, not so great. My wife and baby have been sick all weekend. They finally got their appetite back. I'm gonna make spaghetti red for them tonight. That's what my wife is hungry for." You stop what you were doing the moment he gave a little bit of himself to you, and you give a little bit of yourself back. Never ask a throw-off question like, "How you doing today?" And when someone is good enough to give you a response, just blow it off. You acknowledge that. You look up over the counter and you say, "I'm sorry your wife and baby are sick. You're doing a great job taking care of them. I'm happy to be the one taking care of you today. Now, you wanted a pound of ground beef, right? Reach in the cooler, get a little extra. You already measured that pound. He knows and you know you've already measured the pound. You reach in there, you put a little bit more on the top, you wrap it up, and you hand it over to him and say, "There you go. There's your pound of ground beef. I gave you a little extra because you're doing such a good job taking care of your family. I'm going to do a good job taking care of you. Now going around the corner, Johnny will cash you out. Thank you so much for coming in. We really appreciate your business. You take care of yourself too, along with your family, and we hope to see you again soon. And tell your friends too. We'd love to take care of them." Now, was that second interaction a little different than the first? Did it take a lot longer? And that's where I think the recipe isn't in the book. I mean, the recipe, I realized after starting to speak, people wanted me to do workshops on comeback sauce for their people. And I think there is a recipe for it. Like Dad said, the ingredients are different. For that gentleman, it was a little bit extra, and it was just a acknowledgement. I love when Dad says, never, ever, ever ask a throw-off question. We do it all the time. Watch today. As you go around your life, you'll say, "How you doing today?" Somebody answers, you don't even say anything. "Yeah, fine, whatever." But I think that's when I really learned that there is a recipe. It's 1 part recognition. "I'm sorry your wife and baby are sick." It's 1 part connection. You're taking care of them. Let me be the person to take care of you today. Add a dose of the unexpected. You wanted a pound, I gave you a little bit more. Doesn't have to be a lot. So I think that recipe, when you look at it and you look at every relationship, and Joel, I mean, you are, like I said, when I met you, I knew he gets it. Think about how you pour the comeback sauce on the people that are around you. And that's why you've gotten so far in your career, is because you're one of those people that people want to have connections with. They want to share their stories with.
Well, I think that and thank you. I mean, I think we all have that opportunity, and it's almost like the way you wrote the book too. Once it becomes part of who you are, it doesn't take thought in, if I do this, it will lead to that. It just happens naturally, which makes it more authentic. And so, as you were saying this, I was thinking about one of my favorite stories. And you're a storyteller, I'm a storyteller. I don't think I've shared this one on the podcast. I share it sometimes with audiences, although it's been a little while. I'll be quick with it because I want to get to the baseball themed questions, and I don't want to steal your thunder. But I think it's a good example, because I so often say to people, and this is so perfect for everything that you said, about the butcher shop, about the competition. I ask the question all the time, what makes you different? Because let's just assume everybody's good at whatever they do. There are plenty of other good broadcasters. There are plenty of other good lawyers. There are plenty of other good whatever it is, we all have competition. What makes you different than anyone else? And a lot of people miss the comeback sauce. So, am I the best broadcaster or anything like that? No. Do I have great connections and relationships with the players? Of course I do. But, it's happened organically over the years, and there are moments. And so what I was thinking about as you were telling this was, there was a day, it was Mother's Day. It's one of my favorite stories, a few years back. And Mother's Day every year, they'll always ask me to talk to different players and get little sound bites about their moms, and we can run it, that Sunday. And so, here we are in Baltimore on a Tuesday, and I'm trying to collect stuff for Sunday. And so I walk up to Salvador Perez, the star of the Royals, star then, the star now, and I say, "Salvi, I want to get something about your mom for Mother's Day." And he said, "It's Tuesday, Joel. Mother's Day is on Sunday." Now, we have part of the secret sauce, the comeback sauce with him is knowing how to play off of him and give it back to him, and keeping him laughing as he keeps me laughing and all that. I said, Salvi, I said, we plan in advance. I know you think we just wing it, but we actually plan what we're doing, just the way you study for a game. I said, I only need a minute. And he fires back at me and he says, my mom is worth much more than 1 minute. And I said, I agree with you on that one. I think your mom's amazing. She and I talk, we communicate on a semi-regular basis, sharing messages. I have to get a translator up. She doesn't speak English, but it works. It's beautiful. She's an amazing woman from Venezuela. And I said, no, of course, anything you want, you can have as much time as you want to talk about your mom. He said, well, why don't you have me on your show live on Sunday? Because I'm not going to be catching. I'm going to be the DH, so I'll have some time. We're going to be in Cleveland at that point. I said, are you inviting yourself onto my show? And he laughs. He said, yes. I said, yeah, of course. You can come on. So fast forward to that Sunday, and he comes out with us live. Now, there's a lot going on. My broadcast partner, Jeff Montgomery, had food poisoning the night before, so I don't need to explain that, but he's eyeballing a trash can during the whole live interview. As can often happen in life, we were dealing with some stuff back at home. When you have kids, things are happening. You're on the road. It was a tough day at home. It's Mother's Day. My wife is dealing with all that. My mind was on nothing but text messages back and forth at home. Every time I was off camera or in a commercial break, I'm dealing with stuff at home. My mind was not on this interview. But I made sure as we were doing this interview and when I was on camera and hoping Monty's not going to get sick and all of that, to say, Salvi, tell me more about your mom. As long as you want, talk about your mom. And he was bragging about her and his soon-to-be wife and on and on and on. So that's it. I don't remember the game. I can't wait to get home. I just want to be with my family. It was a rough day. And we get off the charter plane, and I'm walking to my car, and I'm about there, and I'm ready to get home. I'll be home in 25 minutes, and I hear his booming voice and his thick Spanish accent. Joel, come here. Now remember, these guys don't need anything from me. What makes me different? And I look, and it's Salvi, and I never do this, but I'm like, oh, I just want to go home. I don't want to talk to him. I can't believe I just admitted that, but it was a tough day. So I walk back to him, and he looks at me, and he says, I just want to let you know that my mom and my fiance both wanted to say to you, thank you for highlighting them and allowing me to talk about them on TV.
Oh.
And it was like, that's the comeback sauce right there, right? And it's just, what can you do to help others? What can you do when it's, look, he wanted to be with his family and all that day too. So too long of a story on my part, but it's just that reminder that it doesn't take a whole lot, especially if it's authentic.
No, and I think that's the key. It's authentic. It's just when people know, and that's why I think what my dad would say, meaningful connections. Meaningful connections, and meaningful is what's important to that person you're connecting with. I think that he'd always say you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should listen twice as much as you talk. And people laugh at that who knew my dad, like, really? Your dad would say that? Because
he's a talker.
Because he was a talker. But I think when it was important, and he would make sure that whatever he was sharing was so applicable to you. That's why, Mandy called it Lunchmeat Life Lessons. That's why eventually, I love it so much because the title really came from that legacy of, it was food for thought and inspiration, and it was specifically, mixed up for you. He might share the same story over and over again, but when he shared comeback sauce with me, and he knew it was at that moment that I really was listening, that he made it applicable for me about, because I remember saying to him, I was in staffing. I said, Dad, we don't want it. That might work for you at the meat market. We don't want, there are a lot of people, we don't want to come back. They don't have the right skills. They no show, no call. I sat in that office. I watched the people, what they do. There are people that don't come in. And he goes, wow. For an educated young lady, you have a lot to learn. Don't take it so literally. It's not whether you actually want them to come back or not. It's how you want to make them feel about their interaction with you. Those people you have to let down. Those people you have to let go. You want to do it in a way with integrity and respect that make them think, I've never had somebody deliver bad news in such a meaningful way to me that they didn't make me wrong. It was just the situation wasn't right, and that was so helpful to me because, especially in staffing, when I was in staffing, those people you let down, let go, the next day you might be calling on their mom, and if you did wrong by their kid, you know how moms are, so I think that to me, that was really the start of all the stories. I think the Comeback Sauce story. And then, like I said, there's so many other stories in the book. I mean, almost any crossroads you have in your life, there's a story that I share in the book that Dad would help me with. And I just think I think at the end of it all, my favorite story is the story of his last day. And that's the story where I know I was alone with him in the hospital on his last day. And this is the last chapter. That's why I said I wrote first chapter, last chapter. And the last chapter was when, again, out of all these kids, I told you my sister was super ill. They didn't give her much time to live. Dad left her bedside and was like, I'm not bearing another child. And I think he willed himself to die. He had congestive heart failure. We get the phone call, he's going to pass. And I get over to the hospital. I'm the only one there. It's Christmas week. We're trying to get all the families trying to get everything situated so he can get home and die in front of the fireplace. And for some reason, I'm alone with him. And, in those days it was Shawnee Mission Medical Center. And he'd been pouring Comeback Sauce on all the nurses, flirting with them, getting them all, this is my daughter, Mary, he introduces me. He was so coherent. And I remember I'm looking across from him and I'm sitting in this chair and I'm squirming in this chair. And he looks over at me, burly voice, you look so uncomfortable. And I look over at him and I said, I am uncomfortable, Dad. I mean, I'm thinking about my sister Joan across town and she gonna, all this stuff going on, Scott getting the boys, what's happening. I'm thinking about everything but where I am in the moment. And he stopped me and he looks over at me and he goes, you look so uncomfortable. And I said, I am uncomfortable. And his voice got so soft, which was unusual. And he looks over at me and he said, you don't need to be. And he took his big had huge gnarly hands from being a butcher all those years. And he taps himself on the shoulder and he points to his shoulder. And he says, come on, climb on up here. Snuggle with me. These nurses won't care. They love me. Come on. And so I did. I climbed up into his hospital bed, knowing that, he had hours to live. They had taken all the wires off of him. They were going to take him home so he could pass in front of the fireplace like he wanted to. And I climb up into his hospital bed with him, and it's just me and Dad. And I could not believe it. And I was thinking about all that's going on in my family, and I start crying. And I just lost it. I'm shaking and I'm crying and I'm shaking and I'm crying. And Dad could feel it and he could hear it. And he looks down at me. And again, he always had kind of that gruff voice, and his voice was so soft. And he looks down at me and he says, Mary, are you okay? And I look up at him and through my tears, I go, no, Dad, I'm not okay. Are you okay? And I'll never forget what he said. He looks down at me and goes, yes, I'm okay. I'm proud of who I am and what I've done. I like what I see in the mirror. If this is how it ends for me, this is how it ends for me. I'm okay with that. And, because it's always all about me, right? I look up at him crying and I'm saying, well, good for you, Dad. Good for you. I'm happy you're okay, but I'm not. Who am I going to go to now? Where am I going to go? Who's going to inspire me now? What am I going to do? Crying. Who's going to inspire me now? And he looks down at me and he says, oh, Mary, that's so easy. Your mother and I have taught you well. Inspire yourself. You'll figure it out. Inspire yourself. And that's exactly what I did. Yeah. I wrote Lunchmeat Life Lessons, and I inspired myself when I wrote it. And every single time I get to share it with people like you and your listeners, I get inspired again. I mean, I hope your listeners got something out of it. But at the end of the day, my husband always says, go do a speech or go do a podcast, go do something. Whenever I'm cranky, he goes, you'll be much nicer afterwards. And, whenever I'm down in the dumps or whatever, I go do that. I get to talk about this, and I'm reminded I want to be able on my last day to say the things that he said on his last day. I'm proud of who I am and what I've done. I like what I see in the mirror, and I think that to me is the kind of like when you look at the end game and where I want to be. And, I know one of your questions is, what's your greatest home run? And I think my greatest home run was being born number 9 of 10 children to John and Mary Bickelmeyer of Shawnee, Kansas. And that foundation that then, helped me find my husband's God and raise my family. And now a new granddaughter 3 weeks ago, Vivian James, has become part of our family. And, I think my home run is my family, and it's foundationally, who I am, and everything I hope to achieve all comes down to how they view me and what our relationships are like. And and, the rest of it, and all the other people that have come into my life that are so important to me, I think are all an end result of how I grew up, who I am, how I came to be who I am, and those meaningful connections that have led me to other meaningful connections that fill my life and my soul and my heart.
Oh, it's so beautiful, and it's just it's deep, it's meaningful. It has me thinking. It has me emotional thinking about it. I'm usually pretty stoic too. There's just so much there, and so much perspective, and this, you're so lucky. That is, so you did just answer the first of the baseball theme questions, which is great, because it's perfect. It fits everything, the home run and everything that you just discussed. So let me move on to the swing and a miss. And I'm sure your dad had a lot of swings and misses, yet I know that he had that perspective too, in reading through it, of handling failure, of finding the best in a situation. So there's a lot of positivity and perspective and optimism there. But how about for you? What's a swing and a miss, and what did you learn from it?
I think when I think about swing and a miss, I think again, this, I don't know why I come to this, because maybe I just talked about family, but I remember, when I first had Chase, my oldest son, I struggled because I was the only female in my family that decided to have a career and work outside the home once I had children. And I was struggling with it because, that's what everybody did, and I remember reading this book about when mama's happy, baby's happy. When mama's, so the right decision for the individual is the right decision based on, what your kid's going to be okay as long as you're okay. And a mom who's staying at home who doesn't want to stay at home, or a mom who's working who doesn't want to work, and I remember I was really thinking about not continuing my career. And I think that was my swing and a miss, where I started thinking I'm not going to do that. And I will say it was a lot of really incredible support from my family, especially my husband. And he was an equal parent all the way. I traveled. I did kind of like, I know you said you struggled with it, and you told the Salvi story. You wanted to get home on Mother's Day. You wanted to be, but I remember I almost didn't keep doing what I loved doing so much. And when I continued my career, I think my sons then saw, that how fulfilling it was for me. And I didn't miss important things. I was lucky enough to have that opportunity to really stay. I was obviously, they love their mama now. It just, to me, it was like I don't know why I thought about that. And it's kind of a rambling answer, but I thought I almost didn't keep doing what I loved doing. And now it has just created so much for me. And I think part of that is this confidence level too. I mean, put me in front of any crowd, 300, 600, however many it is. And I just think that I wouldn't have been comfortable, or I wouldn't have even written the book if I, along with the way, based on my corporate career, if I wouldn't have met like Stephen Covey and Hyler Bracey, and he wrote Managing from the Heart. He was an inspiration for me. I met Stephen Covey early in my career before he even wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So I think I was able to get certified in Ken Blanchard's situational leadership. So Stephen Covey endorsed my books. Ken Blanchard endorsed it. Hyler Bracey was a huge inspiration for me. He introduced me to my editor once I wrote it, who helped me. And so those connections that I made have really been fantastic for me in terms of being where I am right now. And I think I would also put my 2 boys up against any kids anywhere. They're just amazing young men. So it all worked out for me. And again, I think everyone has to do what's right for them, but that was my biggest swing and a miss, was that such a struggle with, am I doing the right thing? And I feel like I did, for me.
How about small ball? What are the little things that add up to the big results?
Small ball, super easy answer, because we already told the story. I mean, small ball is kind of comeback sauce. Make a meaningful connection with every person, no matter who they are. You don't treat the CEO any different than you do the janitor that's coming in to clean the office. There's every single person deserves that comeback sauce, make a lasting impression. And I think that's small ball. When you talk about small ball, is making sure that it's those details. Every play is important. Every interaction is important. They all add up. And the sum total of all of it is that, that's the real home run at the end of your life when you play small ball really well. Those connections and how you're perceived and who you are, and most importantly, what you think when you look at yourself in the mirror. That's the sum total of playing really great small ball.
I love it. It all adds up. It all counts in the end. So, okay, 4 final questions. We'll go through these quickly as we wrap up. And sometimes these are lighthearted. Sometimes they're not. The first one will be lighthearted. What was your favorite meat? What was your favorite thing to get at the butcher shop when you were a kid? You walked in and you had to have what?
Oh, okay. So that's changed. Salami, sliced real thin on Wonder Bread. That salami sandwich there is not anything better. Today, if I go down there, the ribeye steaks are the most amazing. And I like ribeye. I like that. But honestly, if you go there on a Saturday, if you get the tamales, everybody talks and raves about the tacos, but I love Yvonne's tamales. They are so good. But so I usually get a 6-pack of tamales when I'm down there too. But I think definitely if you haven't been down there, and I could brag on all of my mouth watering. If you have a roast, you get a bone-in arm roast on a Sunday, because you can't get a bone-in arm roast at Hen House or Hy-Vee. You go in there to the meat market, you get a bone-in arm roast, you put it in with potatoes and carrots and onions around it. And but I mean, if you ask anybody, they all have their favorites. But mine right now, I'm thinking I might have to go down there and get a ribeye for tonight to put on the grill.
Yeah, I may need to do something this weekend myself, or at least pop in for something. So we'll see. All right, second question as we round the bases. I just think this is fun. Rattle off all those names again. I'll ask you why in a moment. All the sibling names.
God bless Joan, Judy, Johnny, Jimmy, Joey, Jerry, Jeannie, Jane, Mary, and Barbara.
Whew. And could you always keep track of it all? I mean, could it? Yeah. I don't know. And could your dad keep track of it all? And your mom?
No, my dad would mix up my name all the time. He would be like, Jeannie, Jane, Mary. Yeah, Dad, I'm Mary. My mom had absolutely no trouble. Every one of us, when my mom passed away, the only thing I asked for was the needlepoint that hung on the kitchen wall that she had that said, a mother is the only person on earth who can have 10 children and yet each child have all her love. A mother is the only person on earth who can have 10 children and yet each child have all her love. My mother would not only say my first name, she would say Mary Treese, Mary T, Mary Treese. But every one of us, every kid would tell you, every one of us would say, Mom, somehow you were like, my mom was an only child, believe it or not, an only child with children. But Dad was one of 10 and the chaos was normal for him. So we all laugh. I really legitimately don't know if he ever actually, I mean, I know he knew I was Mary, but when he started to say, if he wanted me to come here, it'd be Jeannie, Jane, the little girls, Jeannie, Jane, Mary, Barbara. It would just be like, he'd rattle off, I'll eventually get one of you right, But yeah. So yes, but it was fun having all the J's, and some of my brothers and sisters have kept that J's alive, and even their grandchildren have. So I broke the J's, and then I have Chase and Nick.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that leads me to my third question, and in the dedication to the book, and you mentioned your mom in the dedication, and then you say for Chase and Nick, because I want you to know your grandfather's wisdom, because I pray his wisdom will live on in you, and because I love you both more than words can ever tell. I mean, this is so much of the inspiration of this book to pass on this legacy. The reason why I go here with this question is now that legacy grows deeper in terms of generations. So this book, I suspect, now becomes more than just something for your children. It now becomes for young Vivian, a grandchild, huh?
Yeah, Vivian, Vivienne, Vivian James Lucas. So my son and my gorgeous daughter-in-law Haley welcomed Vivi to their family 3 weeks ago, yesterday, and I still get goosebumps even telling it. With COVID, I don't get to see her as much as I want to, and I held her the first couple of days she came home, and then we were exposed. So we're trying to be super careful. And so I got a COVID test at 4:10 today, so I can hopefully hold her this afternoon or tomorrow again. But this is such an incredible gift to our family. And, I feel very blessed that Haley and Chase live close by. And so Vivi will be very much, and G-Ma and G-Pa is what we're going to be, I think. G-Ma and G-Pa's lives. And so I definitely have to do additional. And what's great about it is when I have the hardcover, I get Walsworth Printing does the printing for me, so I can change the inscription as I get the next run, and add Vivi's name to it. So
perfect.
I think it'll be that next generation. So she'll know her great grandpa. I hope, and I imagine, and I hope that the wisdom will live on, even with this next generation, and hopefully future grandchildren to come.
Yeah. It's timeless, and so that's the beauty of it. The last question for you, my walk-off, is what would your dad, what would the butcher, what would John Bickelmeyer think of Lunchmeat and Life Lessons and his legacy?
I know exactly what he would say. He would look at me, and he would look me in the eyes, and he'd say, "Oh, Mary, I'm so proud of you, just as I am all my children." Never, ever once, never once did I ever hear growing up, "Mary, I'm so proud of you, just me." My mom wouldn't do it. My dad wouldn't do it. If they were proud of me, they would look at me and they would say, "Mary, I'm so proud of you, just as I am all my children." We were always reminded that we were part of something greater than ourselves, the Bickelmeyer family. And so I think he would acknowledge that he was proud of what I've done and this legacy I've created. And he would also remind me, "Girl, you're part of something bigger than yourself. And you're very blessed to be a part of this family." So that's exactly what I know exactly what he would say.
That right there is the butcher's wisdom. And Mary B. Lucas, Mary Bickelmeyer Lucas, comma BD, which stands for Butcher's Daughter. You don't need any fancy doctor title. It's just BD. But ultimately what this is just unbelievable life lessons that I truly believe have and will continue to live the test of time, which is such a testament to your father and your mother as well, and your ability to share and pass on those stories. You're an unbelievable storyteller, so authentic, so moving. And I feel like I'm being taken back to a time too. I hear so much of my grandfather, who was older than your dad, but and he had that that ability to connect with everybody. He owned dry cleaning plants. I mean, this was before I was born, but he was the life of every room that he walked into, and just had that. So it's taking me back to another time, and I'm sitting there thinking that so much in the world changes, but yet none of this is outdated, and that truly is legacy. So the book is Lunchmeat and Life Lessons, Sharing a Butcher's Wisdom. The website, if you're interested, whether it be in the book or more about Mary, her services, notice she hasn't tried to promote any of them, is maryblucas.com. That'll be in the show notes as well. I'm so glad that we have had the chance to get to know each other. I know there's a lot more coming. I'm pretty sure I could have these conversations with you every day and learn and exchange. And so I'm grateful, Mary, to Alana Mueller for connecting us. For you for sharing all the wisdom and coming on the podcast, and congratulations on young Vivian.
Thank you so much, Joel, and I'll see you at the Royals game. I'll be there. Well, I think we've got tickets September 18th or 19th or one. So and we've got my husband has had season tickets he shares, and they're right behind the dugout first base. So I'll wave to you when I see you that day.
I guarantee you, well, unless something funny happens, I will be there. I always am. So. And I'll be down to the butcher shop soon, I am sure. Mary, thanks so much. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks so much, Joel. Bye-bye.